Hey guys, it's Sebastian here with Lost Hombres, episode 32. So we're moving up in the world, and thank you guys for coming back and listening. And I'm here to share whatever knowledge I have, and we'll cover some topics today, especially diving into the psyche, diving into mental health, diving into spirituality, and breaking down how we can better understand these two and how they're actually complement each other all the time. Reality and maybe understanding that some of the old psychology that's been used was meant to create more distress in people, cause a lot more chaos within people. I mean, it's surprising, for example, why we've been following someone like Freud for so long when people like Carl Jung have come up and have done amazing work and have been really pushing humanistic approach, something that's much more valuable if you want to actually help heal people versus condition people. So one of the things that I see can happen at times, especially within the mental health world, is conditioning people, right? We're conditioning them to be accepting of their environment and conditioned to be less proactive to their life. I can help. I see a lot of old philosophy being like, let's help just get rid of these symptoms and get them back onto whatever they call normal. But then deep down, they're not actually fixing the deeper wounds. They're just fixing temporary problems. I see old philosophies of therapy are similar to the way medications work. So it's meant to just kind of be for its purpose. And then beyond that, it's not really as sought as like necessary or helpful. So I see it as just kind of like, hey, this is helping kind of move along a problem. Actually, this happens a lot in the medical field in general, where they're kind of pushing along a bigger problem. So it's like, hey, you got high blood pressure, cool, take this blood pressure medication. But like fundamentally, the problems never change. Like what led to this issue? And you see a shift in a lot of what's happening in the medical field because of things like ACE, which is the adverse child experiences. So we're now accepting that childhood trauma has a significant problem with people as they get older and as they, try to develop into healthy adults. It's not very helpful when they're trying to get older and you have all these traumas from your childhood. And the old way of kind of handling it, and a lot of people, may remember these things, but like alcoholism was pretty rampant for a lot of people. There were over the counter medications. So things like Quaaludes, things that were considered being provided by doctors and specialists. Most of the addictions that we know about was because they were given away by pharmaceuticals. It wasn't like people started just randomly using drugs in high capacity. It's because these things became available, and a lot of them were because of doctors giving medication. I mean, alcohol has been around for a long time and it has had medical, like recommendations. So a lot of addiction comes from the medical field itself, promoting these things as cures to diseases that they shouldn't have been cures for. And how do we know this? Because people didn't get cured, they got worse. And so if this was a miracle cure, and that's I think another philosophy in general that's probably wrong or that is wrong with the United States is that we have again that philosophy that like the quick fix, right? Let's just get you back into working. Let's get your everything just back into functioning instead of processing pain, instead of really understanding it, root causes, allowing that healing process to happen. Considering healing is about a physical and spiritual component, right? Yeah, your body might be functioning and you might be healthy, but you're not functioning because that car accident you were in is still hurting you on the inside because you're still getting nervous, anxious, feeling uneasy, even though maybe physically your body is already healed to a certain capacity in comparison to the car accident. But that doesn't mean your being is healed. And when we take this part out, we start to try to make people into robots, right? Kind of control the way they operate. And so, again, it goes back to this idea with the medical field that we've essentially taken away people's being or soul. And so we turn them into more like just like a workhorse, or it's like having a family cow versus just having a cow that you're going to slaughter, right? That cow that you're going to slaughter, you're going to have a lot less compassion, understanding versus like a family cow who you let properly heal through the pain they're going through, both on the physical and emotional. We have a lot of focus on alleviating symptomology. And even in the medication itself, it says will not like fix the problem, it will just mask symptoms. So you're still fighting a disease or whatever it may be, but you're not experiencing the symptoms of that disease, right? So that's just masking a deeper issue again, right? Fixing alcohol or fixing depression and anxiety with alcohol, again, may temporarily alleviate the distress and pain associated with it, but it will not cure it because once the effects of alcohol leave, all that returns and sometimes in even greater forms, right? And so that's not going to create harmony. That's going to create chaos within a person. So we can see there too, right? There is some problems fundamentally with the way we approach things within the society. A lot of push towards symptom management. Even in the therapy world, we go to solution focused, which again is just like very quick goals. Like let's get this fixed, let's do this, and there is good in that. Like I agree. There are times where we need results quick because this person is not doing well, right? This person is suffering. This person is going through suicidal ideation. They want to hurt themselves. They're going through a deep, dark process. And while they're going through this process, of course, that's going to be a challenge, right? And they're not going to want to listen. They're not going to have the same ability to like process. They're not going to do well because they're not functioning at that capacity. So I get it. Like in those moments, we need a quick fix, just like there's an emergency room, just like there's a PERT, right? But not everybody needs a quick fix. Some people have deep rooted trauma and they're coming in there, they're saying, I have a pain in my back, but next thing you know, they have cancer, right? They have something really deep going on, and that whatever initial pain it was wasn't actually the problem, like the deeper rooted problem. Yes, it's a symptom they're having, and this symptom is important. But if we don't address the deeper problem, this symptom's just going to keep reoccurring. And even if they can manage this symptom, right, the behavior, that doesn't change the fact that internally they're not hurting. Yes, they are able to mask better. Yes, they know how to give the perception that they're doing well, but that doesn't mean fundamentally internally they're doing well. And some people will take therapy or this process as like a checklist of same thing with the doctor, right? Like, oh, I'm doing good, so I reduce. But again, like reducing symptomology sometimes could just be masking, right? Just as much as an alcoholic that can become a dry drunk is someone who's not drinking, but that doesn't mean they're not suffering like a drunk would be. They're just suffering in a new way. And so the same problem can happen when we're not addressing deeper rooted issues, which is why things like intrafamily systems therapy would be really helpful for somebody who is struggling with that deep rooted childhood trauma, right? So we're already kind of thrown off by the way we approach therapy in general. It's the same way of if you are approaching, spirituality from a religious standpoint, they're gonna have a lot more checklist and like things that you have to do in order to go up in that program. But again, it takes away the way spirituality was intended to work, which is your connection with the divine through a open and aware process. You will gain insight and knowledge, divine insight, divine awareness, from being attuned with the universe, right? Versus if I match all these boxes, God will be happy with me, right? If I do what I'm told, God will be happy with me, right? It's the same thing as doing, oh, if I work on my worksheets, my therapist will be happy with me, my people will be happy with me, right? Instead of like a deeper, like, why am I here? Like, what is my divine purpose? Like, who am I really? Like, what is self actualization? And self actualization is not going to be met necessarily with a like, what is it called? When you want to do it that way. So it's like when you're doing short-term therapy or solution focus. There we go. So when you're doing like solution focus stuff, again, it's all what just very direct, very like this is what we're doing. So Solution focus, again, is really good when the problem is so big that we need a solution right now, right? But when the solution isn't as easy to understand, like again, like my mom hurt me as a kid, and then that's all you're getting from the person at that time. Well, obviously you're not going to get the full picture, and it's going to take several sessions to be able to open up and talk about that, right? The goal is to make sure that this person heals for a very long time, not to make sure this person gets functional in a short amount of time. And that's what's wrong with the way we look now, is that it's all about getting somebody functional quicker, but not necessarily healing them for the long term, right? And so I want to make sure that this person is healing, but healing in a way where it's going to be long lasting. I would rather have somebody in physical therapy that I can teach all the things that they're going to need to know in case they get re-injured, in case something comes up. They have all the tool set to say, hey, I can fix myself. I know I got to work on this, this, and this. I know I felt this pain before. I've been through this process before. I can do this, this, and this to fix this thing. Instead of accepting the pain and managing the pain better, but you're not actually changing the problem, right? You're not fundamentally, yeah, I can deal with the pain more, but maybe I could alleviate the pain better. So instead of being able to deal with the pain better, I can actually alleviate the distress, the pain better, right? And there is a shift towards a more spiritual, mindful approach, right? It's funny too. There are times when, I'm thinking of evidence based, and I can think of things that, happen within the mental health world that we can't really measure, right? And so it's funny with evidence based sometimes, because we limit so much of our understanding because of evidence based practices or evidence based beliefs, because some of these things lack evidence in the scientific way, right? It's hard to really measure things outside of people just telling you, right? Out of interviewing people. So there are things in the world that, without directly interacting with people, right, without interacting with a subjective realm, right, that it's hard, because then we only base our world on objective things, when we know the subjective world is just as important or even more important in some ways, because the subjective world is the internal world that's affecting the behavior. But again, we can only measure behavior, right, from a scientific perspective, right? They haven't figured out how to read thoughts yet, right? You definitely can keep your thoughts to yourself. They still have to ask if you're a liar. Even with a lie detector, no matter what, there's still no way to completely like read your thoughts and put you on a machine. And as your thoughts are coming out, it's reading what's going on. And here's the other problem: because everyone's so wired differently, like they can't wire us all up and read our minds right away, because they have to confirm that our wavelengths operate in that specific way. So everybody would have to have their brain mapped out over time. And even then, every time it's putting something on the screen, you still have to confirm that, yes, that is exactly what I am thinking. That is what my mind is processing right now. So you have to be able to connect with this, source, this thing, to truly understand, right? So these are some things to think about on how it affects us, how, these individuals or these environments can be impacting our spiritual like ability to manage, and just kind of working from a deeper perspective on why mental health is such a challenge right now, especially again going from a time where we wanted to label people and call them things like crazy, right? Another thing that I find challenging, especially being a spiritual person now, is the way we see people who do connect with the divine source, who do connect with things like God, who do connect with things like, Jesus, and how these things have now been labeled at times as psychosis, when I believe that somebody that understands divine source, understands how this can work, may actually be able to help somebody having visions, having challenges, having any kind of dreams. Maybe they're struggling with understanding the divine, and so they just need some extra support so they can learn how to manage these things. So instead of always being worried about demons, they know how demons operate, how to work through these demonic energies, and how to use things like, being one with the self, and having confidence, and using your word, and your word is your sword, and like really understanding some of these concepts that would help them fight these things they call demons. It would help them understand these things. And there's a lot of people out there that lead through control or fear, and what these people really need is love. And that's what humanistic approach is different, where we are trying to find love and commonality between people, where there are people that are trying to find control over people. Like, are people easier to control? Are they easier to, have an order in society, right? Versus giving people power, right? If you give people harmony, you give them power. If give people chaos, you're having control over them. You're helping them lose power, and you're gaining control, right? So this is what happens when we destabilize people that maybe even have like a divine nature to them, right? And either there's times where I'm seeing things, from a spiritual standpoint, things that are very theology based or very like energy based, and I'm sitting here like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. Like, somebody comes from a background in therapy, somebody comes from a background of being a non-believer, somebody comes from a background of science and really only wanting to believe in that. And now when you look at the whole picture, the full picture, you start to see, whoa, I was very mistaken about what I was being taught when I was being led to understand these things as to be. And now that I see the full picture, I see a whole different perspective that I couldn't have appreciated at those times, because I was so closed off to anything being non-scientific. But once you realize what science means, or once you realize like that there are different industries that own different types of, like, groups or entities, councils, whatever you want to call them. When you see that money talks, and you see that these different groups have been compromised, then it's really hard to tell what the truth is. And so, to me, when I can look at a spiritual text and I see a lot of truth there, and I can read a lot of data and I see a lot of confusion there, it's very easy for me to say, hey, this one makes a lot more sense to me, because these numbers don't always make sense to me. They're being led, like, they're being created in a way to lead me to want to believe in them. But this over here makes sense to the way I operate as a human being. Like, this is like, oh yeah, if I understand this for what it is, yeah, I do work like that. Science is explaining you things, but it's making it really hard to believe because it's so complicated at times, right? And I believe that this is part of the reason why it is like this, because it allows people with pride, or people that are very much like, hey, I need that affirmation, I need that security. And they can use these things like these institutions as a sense of security to keep, imposing their belief, like, oh, just because you understand doesn't mean it's not real. Da, da, da. They use this power dynamic. And instead of creating open dialogue with people and say, hey, what's the deeper meaning here? What's going on? There seems to be a clash and a disconnect, right? Where we're not trying to find understanding, right? We're trying to find the knowledge to know. I know this is, instead I understand, right? And we're meant to make understanding of these numbers and these things when we're not professionals in that. We're not meant to understand. And again, sometimes we're not meant to understand so that we're more accepting of whatever the info is. So it's like, yeah, I don't know how to read this data, but if this guy says, yeah, it makes your cancer less, or it does this less, it must be true. But again, it takes away our ability to know for sure. While spiritual realm allows you to what? Say, hey, this theology and this theology, they all connect here and they all disconnect here. So it's easier to kind of manage like what's real and what's not. And it speaks to our reality that we operate within. We don't operate in theoretical numbers. We operate in real numbers, right? We operate in the present moment. And so it doesn't mean that we can't understand theoretical numbers. It doesn't mean that we don't have the capacity to be able to, but it means that it can be manipulated very easily, because again, I can give you fake data that sounds really, believable and conceiving, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily real. I could give you an English word that's not real, but sounds like it should be an English word, right? Because if I come up with one, I can say that, and you'll say, I believe that has to be a word, but it's not. But just because you believe it doesn't mean it makes it true, just like with these numbers, right? But that is what makes your reality true at that moment, because you are making it a truth for you, even though it's not part of reality, right? So we got to understand that psychology and spirituality have a lot more in common than don't, especially as we've grown into this new era of therapy, of humanistic approach. We have a lot of things that after CBT came out, you have things like dialectical behavioral therapy, which also added a new flavor to there that was Eastern medicine, right? So you had the Holy Grail come out of like, hey, wait, thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all different components. Now, if we look at an ancient, mythical, mystic side of things, the spiritual side of things, and we know this already, we have the three doorways, right? We have the subconscious, the conscious, and the superconscious, right? And so when we have these three awarenesses, they've been there for a long time, right? You could say Horus, Thoth, all these people, they were talking about these things a long time ago. Different belief systems, different religions, talking philosophies have talked about the same principles over and over again, right? So the idea of thoughts, feelings, and behavior is just another realm of saying the subconscious and the superconscious, or the id, ego, and superego is the id and superego are also the same realm of feeling and thought. And so again, it's the same basis over and over again, just rehashed and retold in a new way, but the fundamentals don't change. There are three realms to this reality. There's the underworld realm, there's the present realm, and there's the over omnipresent realm, right? And so these three realms are always interacting. The way we feel, right? The way we perceive, and the way we understand. Those three realms are always interacting with each other. Kind of like a toroidal in a way too. Literally your thoughts are shooting up while your feelings are collecting things. So you literally operate like a toroidal. You have a personal bubble around you that exists that you operate within. People, you can feel people within your bubble. And that guy gives me a weird vibe, or I just feel like he's off. That's your subconscious connecting with the environment, right? So subconsciously, you can feel other presences around, right? So this is how the intuition starts to kick in, right? We also have our thoughts, right? And so that's helping us organize and understand data. Right. So if I'm getting a feeling and then I need to use my superconscious to be aware of like, okay, what can I do about this? Like, what is this? What is necessary for this feeling? Like, what operations do I need to do? And so if I need to remove myself, so then my thoughts would be hey, let's get myself out of here. And so that's my focus now, is like thinking of a way that I'm going to remove myself, or where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And like allowing myself that ability to be with the self, right? So I'm choosing a behavior, I'm making do with it, I'm being confident, and I'm moving out and getting away, right? So I'm doing something to make sure that what I am following through with my conscious being, right? So the superconscious and the subconscious work as a team, and it helps you read the world around you. This is also how I would say you can, read things like, anxiety or depression, which in some ways you could just say are demons, for the DSM-5 demons. So you could say like the DSM-5 is a bad energy book, an archon book, and there's different kinds of archons that exist. There's the OCD archon, there's the depression archon, there's the anxiety archon, there's the PTSD archon, and there's different ones, right? There's different jinn, demons, whatever, and that book is what's helping you like diagnose the demon, right? So you're like, oh, you have the anxiety demon. It causes this distress and this distress and this, right? Oh, you have the depression demon. It causes this, and this, doesn't it? And it makes you act like this, and this. Okay. And so we've identified this archon, this parasite, this whatever entity within you. Now we know, based on this entity, it requires these rituals to help it, right? So maybe it's gratitude, or maybe it's learning how to destimulate, right? Give yourself space and time to just be, right? Go meditate, go pray, or whatever, right? Or maybe it's holding you down in your bed and you can't get up, right? And so then you have to set up a schedule where you have to get out of bed by a certain time, or you have to go in bed early, or whatever, right? Like you figure out a way, a ritualistic belief system, through gratitude, positive energy, and neutral energy, or non-judgmental energy, to get this thing out of your system and recorrect your system so that you have harmony again instead of chaos, right? This demon, this entity, this archon, this mental health disorder is obviously affecting your being and is holding you down. Now, as someone who's a therapist, I would then look at my toolkit, my insight, to then say, hey, what does this person need to alleviate this thing that's holding on to them, that won't let go, that tells them, yeah, it's okay to be obsessed about this. It's okay to react this way. It's okay to do this, right? They have this, these core beliefs or these belief systems that are there that are disrupting their life and causing disease. And so then it's my job to go look in the books of, tools and insights, modalities, structures, right? Belief systems that I can then give them as goals, objectives, interventions that they're going to use when these things come. You could say it's like almost like prayer in some ways, right? I'm giving them a behavior that they will choose to so that they can get rid of this negative energy that's draining them or burning them out, right? So it's causing distress in their soul. So they can use these tools and insights to help bring them back to the present moment, bring them back to control, bring them back to clarity and their actual self, their higher self, their self-actualization. When they are able to do this, when they're able to achieve this level of balance again, what this does for somebody is then this helps them be able to keep their calm energy, keep their harmony, and then help them sustain that harmony around them, right? So whether I have chaotic people on the outside of me, right, they're never going to be able to penetrate my harmony because I will not give them that harmony. I am the keeper of this harmony. This is mine to have. You're not able to have it. So you can't keep it because you don't even know what to do with it, to be honest. A chaotic person doesn't know what to do with harmony because they have to disrupt it, right? That's the only thing they'll even say if you just sit there long enough, they're like, well, this is awkward. This is weird. And it's not. You're just being patient. You're just being present. And they can't even handle that. So they have to disrupt it, right? So I don't owe my harmony to anybody. I don't owe that. So if that's what they want from me, they're not going to get it. If they want an answer from me, I will give them an answer. I will tell them what I believe. But if they want my harmony, they're not going to get that. They're just going to create more chaos for themselves. And they're already living in chaos. And the irony of it is whether you help this person or not, they're still going to drain you and they're still willing to go into as far chaos as they need to. So whether you tried to work with them or not, it wouldn't have changed their reality because they're not addressing their, whatever you want to call it, their inner parasite, their inner demon, their destability, their archon, their unhealthy systems and functions. There's many words to use. You could say it's, it's a mal programming from childhood or something. You could, I mean, there's a million ways to look at it, but at the end of the day, it's still causing a certain amount of symptoms that are all recognizable and we can label it as something. And this label then needs a certain amount of like ritualistic things and changes in philosophy to be able to alleviate, which is the same process of like, getting a demon out or again, an archon or a bad spirit. It's the same philosophy, essentially. It's the same ideas, right? So therapy and shamanism, or the idea of like healing through words, healing through positive thoughts and feelings, healing through a greater purpose, right? Saying like, hey, I'm better than what I am today. I can be a great person. I'm going to achieve a lot in my life. Having these belief systems is what helps people heal, helps them become the greater version of themselves, helps them achieve their dreams, their philosophies, their beliefs, their objectives, their goals, and be able to do it in harmony versus doing it in chaos. So a big difference I also see is that we don't fundamentally teach like what are these things, like what is the intention that we're trying to, like we say we want you to get better, but what does that mean? I don't want you to suffer. What does that mean? Okay, so what's the opposite? Well, again, harmony, right? And we can break these two down really easy because if we break down harmony and chaos, it'll make a lot more sense for us than things that are good and bad for us. Because there's a lot of things that taste really good but are really bad for you. And there's a lot of things that taste really bad that are really good for you. So it's a really weird measurement. And if I go around asking everybody what's good or evil, what's good and bad, they're going to give me 50 million different answers. Same thing if I just gave everybody permission to have their own inch. Some people would be like, oh, my inch is this big. Some people are like, oh, mine's that big. And then they'd fight about who has the right inch and why it's wrong. And it really doesn't matter because it's an individualistic thing. But when we talk about harmony and chaos has a lot more meaning, it makes a lot more sense. Harmony is when you have an orchestra playing, right, a symphony, and chaos is when you have a middle school band playing because they're trying to find a common note While these are trying to work as a team to create several different notes, right? And so one group's trying to harmonize and one group is trying to support each other, as they're living in harmony through highs and lows, right? So there's a difference. There's a difference in just those two. Even if you look at a plane flight, right? There's a normal plane flight, woo, smooth sailing all the way, woo, easy. And there's a chaotic one. Oh my God, I'm gonna die. Holy hell, fuck. You know. And then you land and you kiss the ground, never fly again because you're like, I will never get in a plane. I will never do that again. Hell no, that's fucking too much. So there you go, right? You can see that harmony, right, leads to a healthy, normal, whatever you want to call it, life, chill life, versus chaos that leads to one of what? Of unhealthiness, of uneasiness, right? So this problem will only add to my, my torture or my suffering down the line, right? So there is some fundamental differences there, right? So we can see again, harmony is when we work as a team, chaos. If I'm having a conversation with somebody and they are talking to me and they ask me a question and I give them an answer, and they don't like my answer, how do I know? Well, they gave me a different rebuttal or they brought up three other points that have nothing to do with what I just said, right? So they are going to beat around the bush. They're literally going to cause chaos because they're not going to get to the point. They're just going to keep going around, right? So there's no point in this relationship. There's no point in this conversation. It's just drained energy because I have nowhere to put that point, right? I have nowhere to find that common ground. So I'm just feeding their ego. And their ego will just keep eating my energy and leave me cold and leave me chaotic, leave me drained, right? Now, someone that's trying to find a common ground with you, you're actually feeding their soul, right? They're empowering you too. So if we're finding common ground, everything works out. You're feeling good, I'm feeling good, and I got you, you got me. There's a lot more neutral, harmonious relationship stuff going on here than somebody that's just beating around the bush and wants me to follow them so they can drain me, right? As they're in control. Okay. So chaos wants control, harmony wants power. So I want to empower myself. The more I find harmony, the more I'm going to feel empowered. The more I cause chaos, the more I'm going to have control of others, as long as they let me have it. And the day they empower themselves, I lose control. And then I lose it because I want control over them. And I have to find a way to destabilize them even more so I can regain control of them, because I can't just gain respect, because I'd have to do that myself. And it's easier just to remain in chaos and keep causing chaos than to find respect in myself and, make a change there. So now we're understanding subconscious, superconscious, people's energy, harmony and chaos, right? So we're understanding some of these things and how they all play a part with each other. Now, harmony and chaos again. We want to think of things like an instrument, right? So if I tune something too up, stress it out, eventually that thing's going to snap. If I loosen something too much, it loses form, it just falls apart. Now I don't hear anything. It doesn't play anything. It's silent, right? So we want to find a middle ground between being too tied up and stressed out and being too low and falling apart. We want to find that middle area, right? That middle area is where we're going to be able to find the most success in our life. We're going to be able to find the most flow in our life. We're going to be able to find the most togetherness in our life, unity, just peace, harmony, right? But here's the problem with harmony. Harmony can be lost in two ways, okay? You have stress out too much, or again, lose my form, right? So those two can affect you. So if someone's stressing out your life or you're stressing yourself out, it's going to cause issues. If you're getting bad energy from either the in or out, that negative energy, that's going to bring you down, right? Take you out of harmony. Now, chaos, which is too strung up or too loose, chaos only has one way to fix it. The opposite, right? So if you're too strung up, you need to loosen up. Get back to harmony. You're too loose, you need to tighten up, get back to harmony. Harmony is the middle. But harmony can always be lost in two ways. So you either stress out, depress, you've lost your harmony. So again, we were trying to find this balance point, this harmonious point. Now, why is the harmony so important? Because as we would know, any instrument that's tuned appropriately is going to sound a lot more beautiful and a lot more together and a lot more consistent than one that's chaotic, right? I want the guy that's playing chaotic music to turn it off. And I want the guy that's playing harmonious music to let me keep listening and let me keep being inspired by it, right? So people's voices are the same way. The more you attune yourself, literally attune yourself to your present, right? Father, Son, Holy Spirit, attune yourself right there to the middle. Your voice comes off what? The most direct. So when you find your center, every word you speak comes out with clarity. Every word you speak comes out as if it was meant to come out. You're in flow state. You are self. There's no thought that comes out of you that has to be thought twice of because you don't overthink. You just allow it to be. And when you're just being yourself, you get to be the most authentic version, which is the one you get to have the most energy with. And you inspire those around you. You inspire yourself. You bring everyone to a higher capacity when you align yourself with harmony. It's like having a really good drummer that knows how to keep harmony. He's going to help the band keep it together, right? And so that's what we do. We're like a harmonious bell. We're like a tuning fork. And we find that peace. We help people align to that same frequency. I can help people kind of get to tune with me if I'm at the right tune. If I'm at the right tone, bing, 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 and other people are trying to find that their harmony with me, then at least if I'm playing at a frequency that they can listen to, then they can find it themselves. But if I'm playing out of harmony as well, how can I be telling them and preaching to them, hey, find harmony, if I'm not even teaching them where that tune is myself? If I don't find that frequency within myself, what am I doing to those around me? I'm bringing them chaos as well. And I'm not offering them what we could call salvation or redemption because I'm not even telling them how to get there, what the note is, what the tune is, right? I have to tell them how to tune into the frequency when I have to have it radiating off myself. It's easier to tell someone what station to tune into when you know the station yourself. It's easy to tell someone to find that note when you're tuned to it as well, right? So tuning the self, providing that confidence to your voice and your energy is what's going to help you help others tune themselves when they are looking for redemption. Something that happens that you guys will see too as you start to get more into divine is people who I would consider, or you could say, have, more sin in their life or dabble more into negative energy, tend to avoid me because they're afraid that I'm going to judge them because they already judge themselves. And I'm not going to say anything to them. I really won't even talk to them. But they were afraid because of me taking care of myself, they would rather avoid interacting with me because they know they can't handle that energy, right? They are very self-aware that I could call them out on a lot of things that they're not working on. So they rather just avoid me altogether. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that worry about people. Oh, what if they do this to me? What if they act like this to me? And I explained to them too, hey, once you find your harmony, those people by themselves will just kind of remove themselves because that's all they have is chaos in their nature. So they're going to try to bring that chaos and it's not going to work. And they're just going to leave more frustrated and you left chill, which is definitely not what they wanted because that's the opposite of what they wanted. They wanted chaos and you gave them harmony and that makes them question their reality. So when you bring harmony to people around you, you have that light within you and you enlighten them. It takes away their ability to victimize themselves because you shined a true light on their being, right? And that true light comes from your own light, right? Again, your own being. When you show people how to, play at the right tune, at the right frequency, well, that also inspires them to say, man, there is a way to play the right way. There is a way to learn guitar. There is a way to be able to put my strings together and play beautiful music. If I just listen more instead of complain, if I just am more grateful than have attitude, if I could just find more mindfulness and not judge myself in comparison to others, but love myself for who I am and appreciate the differences I have with others and appreciate them for their differences. If I can have more love in this world than disconnect, love for myself, right? Love for my ability to find true nature, then I can love others around me and find hope for them and tell them when they finally do accept, hey, this person really does love me, they will finally see the truth and say, you really did care about me this whole time. And I really did make it difficult. But the only way to get to that point again is we have to show them what that conscious state is like, what it's like to be mindful, what it's like to be a true self, and just unapologetically love yourself and move forward in this life. and teach them again how to find that divine nature within themselves. So this is again how we can appreciate harmony versus chaos. Now let's talk a little bit about how we're going to talk about exorcisms now and talk about how we can understand that realm of the world and how we can use the information we just gained to help us with the exorcisms that we have. So one of the things that you'll see a lot in, very like mystic beings, whether it's saints, Jesus, or these divine people, is the glowing aura around them, right? Well, what is that? That is when your soul is so aligned with itself that your confidence starts to radiate, right? You can just feel confidence in someone's being, whether it's their body posture, their language, just a lot of different signs, the communication tools that they're using, the way they express themselves. Confidence can radiate off people, and that confidence can be felt through others. So that confidence is what helps you activate your divine source. That is divine source at its core, right? Is being the pure self. When you activate divine source and you've purified yourself of the sin that you're dealing with, right? So you have a clear consciousness. You don't have any like weakness or doubt or whatever. You don't have any insecurity within you because you're secure in the person you are today. Not that you're perfect, not that you don't have problems, but you're secure in the way you observe the world. You're secure with your portion of the world. You're secure with your being within the world. And that security is what helps you stay stable and not allow for that negative energy to interact and intertwine itself. And so people that are trying to exercise demons in their life, the family members and people that they struggle with, they're like, why are they like this? And they're never going to change. They victimize themselves and they do all these things. Well, it's because you have to learn to purge yourself first. And when you are going to use it on them, they are going to try to use it back on you. So they're going to try to weaken you. They're going to try to dim your light. They're going to try to bring up the past. Their job is to destabilize you. And the more they can destabilize you, the more that they're going to have access to block themselves with illusion and then continue to hurt you and destabilize you, giving them more control over you, right? So their job is to make you fall down or fall over, right? By throwing themselves on the floor, by reacting. Their job is to push you out of your groundedness. Their job is to push you out of your element. When you stand strong, like I tell people, you have your faith, which is your shield or your confidence. You have your truth, which is your sword, which is again a form of confidence. I'm going to say the truth. When you have your belt of righteousness, which is your moral compass, your values being aligned, then your self-actualization will show up, your true self, your true nature. And that self-actualization, you could call it your higher being, your purpose, your destiny. When you finally are aligning with that destiny, then that gives you that power to be able to fight these people because they don't have those things. They don't have a shield, right? They don't have the sword of truth. They don't have righteous means, and they don't have a blessing. They're not living as a self-actualized person. They don't have harmony, and they don't have their peace. And so because of this, they are going to be weak to you because they haven't been earning these things. They haven't been earning their shield. They haven't been earning their sword. They haven't earned their belt. They haven't earned their armor. They didn't earn any of that stuff. So until they earn these righteous tools, they are just a shadow. They are just chaos. They are just a being that is looking to hurt and create hurt because that's how they create control through hurt. I am creating harmony because that gives me power. It also empowers the others around me when I give them harmony because they too feel empowered too to cut off people that they find toxic, people that they find chaotic, unhealthy for them. And it doesn't mean that you don't want these people in your life. When you're casting demons out of people you care about, of course you want them in your life. But when they have these chaotic energies in them, right, whatever that may be, whatever resentments they may have, whatever guilt, shame, whatever they may have, well, that negative energy is going to be what prevents them from accessing their true self, which has caused them to be reactive instead of proactive, right? So we go in, we're conscious, we're in our third eye, we're aware, we have thoughts and feelings. We know the outside world is going to trigger us, and we're very well aware of how we're behaving because we're choosing to behave as we are in that moment. So we go in and we now have to talk to somebody that's being, whatever you want to call it, possessed, right? They're being distracted, convinced of whatever they need to be, whether it's the victimization, whether it's their work, their alcohol, their buying, whatever their greed, their lust, their envy, whatever it may be, all those things, right? And so they're going to use this energy to try to destabilize the situation because that's what they have, right? So they might ask me, so what do you think about this, right? What do you think about my drinking? And I'm going to tell them, your drinking is affecting your health. Oh, well, it's not that bad. Da, da, da. And so they immediately start what? Start distracting, start creating chaos. Because they could have just had a conversation. Hey, you're right. I should work on that. Or hey, thanks for bringing that up. Right? They could have shown some gratitude for my response to their question. But instead of showing me gratitude, they're being defensive or they're going to show me attitude. Right? And so these shifts in their energy and their responses is no longer going to lead to what? A conversation that is fulfilling from both ends. We're not going to have a ability to find a middle ground because they're causing destabilization, right? So because of this lack of middle ground, and if I keep pushing the pressure, the issue, they're going to start destabilizing further, right? And so they may say something like, oh, well, you just don't understand, like I've been through a lot. And I'm going to go back and say, it doesn't change the fact that your drinking is still messing with you. And I'm telling you the truth. And then they're going to say something like, oh, well, yeah, I'm an alcoholic, whatever, like what do you want from me? Like fine, I'm a drinker, like everyone's going to leave me anyways. And so again, they start throwing like I'm bad, I'm the evil person, I'm the negative, creating more chaos, right? Continuously more chaos. The last thing they'll do is they'll finally just say, you won't leave me alone about this. You keep telling me this. I already know. I might as well just go kill myself. I'm gonna do, like, they go down the rabbit hole of being chaotic, right? Sometimes they'll throw tantrums. Sometimes they'll break stuff. And again, this is all the same process that you would see in an exorcism in a movie, where first they're denying, they're victimizing themselves, they're becoming the predator, they're becoming the bad one, and then they throw a tantrum and a fit, as if you're like literally like taking a demon out of them, which is this energy, this negative archon, whatever it may be. They'll go away, right? They'll go away. They'll go to their own thing. When they go away, this is when they will go regroup. And this is a chance for them to save themselves. Now, you're not going to get any good energy out of this person after summon the truth to the forefront, call out the demon, call out the greed, call out the envy, and especially if you call it out by name, like that's you doing this, they will react even harder, right? Because you're calling it out and you're recognizing it. They want to be in control, but they don't want to be recognized to be in control, right? They want to have power over people, but they don't want to be recognized of having power over people, especially like in a negative context. So when you allow them to, feel their own wrath, feel their own negative energy, you're also giving the person a chance to save that self that they have, like come back and say, hey man, I messed up. I appreciate you. I know sometimes I'm reactive. I'm going to work on that. And you're giving them a chance at redemption. You're giving them a chance to be able to share who they truly are and what they're remorseful for and how to find that center point with them. So there's a chance that, hey, we can make this work out if someone's willing to redeem themselves and find salvation. But the people that are not, they're going to keep suffering. They're going to keep losing people. They're going to keep having to victimize themselves and create an illusion of their life or a disillusion of their life, so that they can what? Show people, hey, this is who I am, because they have to keep being a performance. And so chaos needs to feed off of a performance or an ego versus someone's soul who can be warmed up, who can be provided power. And another thing too, when somebody is in their ego, when they're in that alternative form, right, you can think of it as like a black hole. It's just going to keep feeding off the energy that anybody's willing to give it, right? I've never seen a black hole produce any energy, right? But it also has nothing to show for it. It's just a black hole. Well, people's egos are the same way, right? At the end of the day, what does it really have to show for, right? Yeah, it has all these things and people, but what does it have to show for? What did it do at the end of the day? What does a black hole do other than just consume energy of others, right? And so when you really look at people and you ask yourself where they at now, there is a difference between people that are lost souls and sold souls. Sold souls are people that are like joining like a cartel, or like people that are in a cult who are going to do bad things, and they're very well aware. So there's people that have sold their soul, who know they're bad people, who are willing to accept they're bad people and are willing to go down a very dark path. And then there's people that are lost souls, who are just like, some aunt and uncle that was traumatized by something and they're just not healing. So there is a very big difference in those two. There's also a difference in suffering and torture. Suffering is the ability to know that there's a way out, but not willing to take the risk to get out. And then torture is when you have no way out and you have to accept all the pain. So torture would be like you are literally in a plane crash going down and you have to experience the pain of it the whole way. While you could say suffering is being in a typical plane ride, and we can breathe, we can work through it, but we're choosing not to, and we're choosing to engage in the thoughts and the catastrophizing. So that's suffering, right? So torture is a choice of, or not, the inability to get out of a situation, and suffering is choosing to remain in a situation even though there's options to be relieved of this situation. People suffer being in a unhealthy relationship, feeling the need that they have to stay and commit and they have to do these certain things. And so they feel obligated on their own accord to do these things. While again, someone that's tortured is being held captive, or they're being threatened with violence and they're not able to leave because they will literally be killed. So suffering and torture are not the same. But people tell you, oh, this is torturing me. But no, it's suffering because there is a clear way to get out and you're choosing not to. And so they're changing the severity of their pain so they can feel more victimized, as if like, oh no, it's impossible, I can't get out. But clearly there's a way out, but they're not willing to engage with this thing. So now let's go back to what we were talking about at the beginning, that we got the subconscious and the superconscious, and these realms that work together and why they're important. Well, people are telling me like, hey, I worry about demons, I worry about things entering me, I worry about like my interaction with these things. And it really comes down to, when you unalign yourself with the true self, you leave room for these negative things to come and these chaotic things to happen, right? So aligning yourself and being true with the self is what keeps these energies away. When you finally find that harmony within your heart and you're like radiating like a bell, then you don't have to worry as much about the negative energy coming in, because that radiation is what's helping you keep these negative energies away. So you don't have to worry like, oh, are they going to come get me? By worrying about it, that worry that there's this thing's going to happen again, yeah, that's giving them access to you. That's feeding their type of style. That's allowing them to come in. Think of it like, if I start playing punk music, who's going to show up? Punks. If I start playing a symphony, well, people will enjoy a symphony, but it's not going to be a punk show. So depending on what energy I'm putting out there, it's going to depend on what energy can access me or come in, right? Same thing on the other end. If I stop giving a fuck and I just start living like whatever, fuck it, it's just my life, I don't give a fuck. Well, I'm allowing the I don't give a fuck demons to come in, or the I don't give a fuck energy to come in, and that's gonna take me one way. If I care too much and I'm fearful and I'm reactive, well, I'm giving another type of energy to come in, right? Same thing. I'm giving that vibe in here. It's the same idea that depending on what music you're listening to before you get home, it might change how you interact with your spouse or not, right? If you're singing about fucking bitches and making money, you're probably not gonna look at your wife the same way as like, I'm in love with you and you're the woman of my life. Like, very different context of music, right? Very different effects on the person. So depending on what you're listening to, depending on what you're engaging with, it will affect the way you interact with the people around you. If you're listening to things that are very disrespectful to the communities around you, you're probably going to see them in a disrespectful way, because you're programming your subconscious to look for these things. So the subconscious, the muscle memory, will automatically look for these things. That's the prejudice. While the superconscious would have to change its reality, change its way it's interacting with people if it wants to take control and create change for future dynamics. But really, the subconscious is the one that's going to be picking up the prejudice. The superconscious will be the one that be aware that, wait, we're all individualistic, like we're not all going to be the same. But I have to think about it, because subconsciously, these are things that I'm seeing. These are things that I'm recognizing as commonalities. So the subconscious is picking up commonalities, while the superconscious is picking up individualities, right? So it's kind of saying the differences in how everyone operates within a bigger group and system, right? Another thing to think about, okay, if you're looking at a snake, you cut out whether it's the head, the body, or the tail, it's no longer a snake anymore. You took out a core piece of it. So again, without all the components, it really isn't a snake at that point. And so we need to understand that we are the same way. We are like the idea of the pipe, a pipe having two holes and a one hole. From the outside, it has two holes, but from the inside, it's just one hole. And we are the same way. We are the inner pipe, right? So our thoughts, feelings, and our behaviors, all that is within the pipe, right? We are the inside. It's all connected, right? But from the outside, they seem very different. But for us on the inside, we see it all as one. We don't separate the selves. We see them as a unit. Even though the outside world may see them as two different sides of us, we see them as a united side. So we're a lot more like the pipe than people understand. And what is a pipe? It's just a portal, really. And if you literally, align some pipes in a circle, the water is going to flow one way, but it's going to keep going round and round and round, right? And that heart, your heart is the system that's pumping this liquid around and around and around that pipe. And again, we are the dualities of these pipes. We are the both ends, right? But the both ends make one whole. So remember what you're worth. Remember that you're a one whole of a fractured self. But those selves are important. Even the Egyptians would say there was the body, there was the sky, and there was the air in the middle, the presence, the atmosphere. And so the atmosphere is the center point between the stars and the ground. And that's the subconscious and the superconscious and the conscious all in one, right? And just because you don't know what you're walking on doesn't mean you're not walking on something or underneath something, right? You're walking between two worlds. You're the center point between these two worlds, between the skies above and the earth below. You're the midpoint that allows them to exist within each other, right? You're the co-author of these two realms, because technically you don't need an atmosphere. Most planets don't even have one, like not the same way we do. But again, it's there for a reason. We need this thin layer of video game reality to be able to say, hey, we are living in this like conscious world here, right? We are the conscious firmament in between the heavens above and the earth below. We are getting to interact with this special place. You can call it the rainbow, whatever. You can call it a lot of things, but that's our realm in the video game, is we get to operate within the system. Angels and demons, these things, they are not on this realm. They don't operate here, just like their radio signals. But somebody with a stronger radio signal could take over your radio if you allow that radio signal to take over. But remember, you're also producing that signal to be a receiver, right? So you have to tune the channel, let that in. So if you get too out of tune of yourself, then you become somebody else. But you're still a radio. So depending on where the frequency goes, it's going to depend on your operating system. So if you go too low or too high, or you mess with the signaling, AM, FM radio, whatever you want to see it as, you're allowing those energies to now speak through you or behave through you, even though they're not you. Because again, you're the vessel to some point. But if you let your soul be gone, then something else takes over. Well, your vessel did it. Maybe you didn't, but you allowed that vessel to be so out of shape and unconditioned that it allowed this thing to come in, right? I can't get mad at the thing that made it in when you stop working on your walls, when you stop working on your barriers, when you stop working. Like if you're gonna eat bad food, well, you're gonna get more, dis-ease in your stomach, right? If you're not going to take the time to ensure that everything's working to capacity, then you're allowing that vulnerability in. So just be aware of your vulnerabilities, be aware of being conscious, be aware of where your existence is. A lot of ancient cultures had three doors to represent the layers of consciousness. And we are here at the present state of consciousness. We are at the middle ground. In Spanish, it would be the yo, which is the self, or the ego, the spirit, or the soul, which gives you spirit. So whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so these are just some things I want to teach you guys today. Welcome aboard and thank you. And that'll probably be it for today. I'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Just remember to be mindful of your present state. Be mindful of, thinking of the future and the past as a self, right? They're all intermingled. The superconscious and the subconscious are intermingled, and the only thing really separating them is your conscious being. Your state of existence is the only thing that's separating these two realities. But without that state of existence, these two realities wouldn't matter, right? What would be the point of having a sub and superconscious state if there was no self in between? Then you would just be operating within a system that there's no conscious being in control. But you get to be the conscious being in control of these two systems, and you get to decide how you want to operate in this world. All right, you guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy. Later.